In the tranquil town of Crestwood, life seemed perfect for John Parker and his family. But beneath the surface of this peaceful community, dark secrets lurk. Join us as we dive into Betrayal in Crestwood, uncovering the secrets of a cheating wife, a gripping tale of love, deception, and resilience. Follow John's journey as he uncovers shocking truths and fights to protect his loved ones from unseen threats. This story will keep you on the edge of your seat, questioning what you truly know about those closest to you. Buckle up for an emotional rollercoaster filled with twists and turns that you won't want to miss. The small town of Crestwood was the epitome of tranquility. Nestled among rolling hills and dense woodlands, it was a place where everyone knew each other, and life moved at a gentle, predictable pace. For John Parker, Crestwood was not just a town, it was home. He had lived here all his life, and he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. John was a middle-aged man with a sturdy build, dark hair flecked with gray, and kind, blue eyes that twinkled with warmth. He worked as a project manager at a local construction company, a job he enjoyed and excelled at. His colleagues admired his dedication and his ability to solve problems efficiently. But more than his work, John cherished his family. His wife, Emily, and their two children, Lily and Ben, were his world. Emily was a striking woman in her mid-30s. She had long, chestnut hair that cascaded down her back and expressive green eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 stories. She was a stay-at-home mom, dedicating her time to raising their children and maintaining their home. Emily was known in the community for her friendly demeanor and her involvement in various local activities, from organizing bake sales to volunteering at the school. Lily, their eldest at 10, was a bright and inquisitive child. She loved reading and could often be found with her nose buried in a book, exploring fantastical worlds. Ben, who was 8, was the more adventurous of the two. He had an infectious energy and was always eager to explore the woods behind their house or build elaborate forts out of whatever materials he could find. Their home was a charming 2-story house with a white picket fence and a neatly trimmed lawn. It was a place filled with laughter, love, and the occasional chaos that came with raising young children. John loved the evenings when they would all sit together in the living room, playing board games or watching movies. Those were the moments that made all the hard work and long hours worth it. Life in Crestwood was idyllic, and John often found himself feeling a deep sense of contentment. But lately, he had noticed subtle changes in Emily. She seemed more distant, preoccupied with something she wasn't sharing. She would often check her phone with a worried expression, and there were times when she seemed to vanish for 20 to 30 minutes without explanation. John tried to brush off his concerns, attributing them to his overactive imagination. After all, Emily had always been trustworthy, and their relationship was built on mutual respect and love. One sunny afternoon, as John was working in the garden, he noticed Emily sitting on the porch, staring intently at her phone. Her brow was furrowed, and she seemed engrossed in whatever she was looking at. John wiped the sweat from his brow and approached her, a friendly smile on his face. "Hey, Em," he said, leaning down to kiss her on the cheek. "What's got you so focused?" Emily quickly locked her phone and smiled up at him, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, just some messages from the community group. We're planning the next bake sale, and there's a lot to organize." John nodded, accepting her explanation, though a nagging feeling remained at the back of his mind. "Need any help with the planning? You know I'm always here if you need an extra pair of hands." Emily shook her head. "Thanks, John, but I've got it under control. Just a lot of details to sort out." John watched as she stood up and walked inside, her phone still clutched tightly in her hand. He wanted to believe her, to trust that everything was fine. But as the days passed, the little inconsistencies and the missing chunks of her time became harder to ignore. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, John sat alone in the living room, his mind racing. He replayed the events of the past few weeks, trying to piece together any clues that might explain Emily's behavior. He knew he needed to talk to her, to get to the bottom of whatever was going on. But he also knew that confronting her without solid evidence could lead to unnecessary conflict. The next morning, as Emily was busy preparing breakfast, John decided to check her phone while she was occupied. He found it on the kitchen counter, and with a quick glance to ensure she wasn't looking, he unlocked it. What he found shocked him. There was a widget with 2 maps operating simultaneously, showing different locations. Confused, John realized that Emily could manipulate the GPS to make it appear as though she was somewhere she wasn't. He also discovered encrypted emails that she had been sending to an unknown recipient. His heart pounded as he scrolled through the messages, filled with cryptic references and coded language. Just then, Emily walked back into the kitchen, and John quickly set the phone down, his mind reeling with the implications of what he had found. He knew he couldn't keep this to himself any longer. He had to confront her, but he needed to do it carefully, without causing a scene in front of the children. That evening, after dinner, John asked Emily to join him in the living room. The kids were engrossed in a movie upstairs, giving them a rare moment of privacy. "Emily," John began, his voice calm but firm, "we need to talk." Emily looked at him, a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. "What is it, John?" "I found something on your phone today," he said, watching her reaction closely. "There's a widget with 2 maps, and I saw some encrypted emails." "What's going on, Emily?" Emily's face paled, and for a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. But then, she straightened, her expression hardening. "John, you had no right to look at my phone. How dare you invade my privacy?" "I had to," John replied, his frustration mounting. "You've been acting strange for weeks. I needed to know what was going on. Emily, please, just tell me the truth." Emily took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "All right, John, I'll tell you everything, but you have to promise me you'll listen and try to understand." John nodded, his heart heavy with dread. He had no idea what she was about to reveal, but he knew it would change everything. Emily began to explain how she had gotten involved with a mysterious organization. They had initially approached her with what seemed like a harmless request to help with some community projects. But soon, their demands grew more sinister. They threatened her and the children, forcing her to comply with their increasingly dangerous tasks. "They have eyes everywhere, John," Emily said, tears streaming down her face. "I had to use encrypted emails and manipulate the GPS to protect us. They told me if I didn't follow their instructions, they would hurt Lily and Ben. I couldn't risk it." John felt a surge of anger and protectiveness. "Why didn't you tell me, Emily? We could have faced this together." "I was scared, John," she sobbed. "I didn't want to put you or the kids in danger. I thought I could handle it on my own." John pulled her into a tight embrace, his mind racing with thoughts of how to protect his family from this unseen threat. "We'll figure this out, Emily. We'll find a way to keep our family safe." But even as he spoke, John knew their lives would never be the same. The peaceful existence they had known in Crestwood had been shattered, and they were now plunged into a world of deception and danger. The days following Emily's confession were a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. John knew he had to act fast to protect his family, but he felt overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. The peaceful life they once knew seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a dark cloud of danger and deceit. John decided to enlist the help of his old friend, Mark, a retired detective who had moved to Crestwood for a quieter life. Mark was a grizzled veteran with a sharp mind and an unyielding sense of justice. If anyone could help unravel this mystery, it was him. John met Mark at a local diner, a cozy spot where they could talk without arousing suspicion. Over cups of steaming coffee, John recounted everything Emily had told him, showing Mark the encrypted emails and the strange GPS widget. Mark listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This is serious, John. If what Emily says is true, we're dealing with a highly organized group. They've got resources and aren't afraid to use threats to get what they want." John nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. "I don't know what to do, Mark. I need to protect my family, but I don't even know where to start." Mark leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "First, we need to gather more information. We need to find out who these people are and what they want. I'll start by looking into those emails and tracing the IP addresses. In the meantime, you need to keep a low profile. Act normal and don't let on that you know anything. The last thing we need is for them to get wind that we're onto them." John agreed, grateful for Mark's help. He returned home, determined to act as if everything was normal. But inside, he was a bundle of nerves, constantly on edge. Every time the phone rang or someone knocked on the door, he braced himself for bad news. Emily, too, was struggling to keep up the facade of normalcy. She continued with her daily routines, but John could see the fear in her eyes. They had agreed not to tell the children anything, to protect them from the harsh reality of the situation. Lily and Ben sensed something was wrong, but they accepted their parents' assurances that everything was fine. A week passed, and John grew increasingly anxious. He knew Mark was working tirelessly to uncover the truth, but the waiting was tortuous. Finally, one evening, Mark called. "John, I've got something. Meet me at the park in an hour," Mark said, his voice urgent. John arrived at the park just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grass. Mark was waiting for him on a bench near the playground, a manila folder in his hand. John sat down, his heart pounding. "What did you find?" John asked, barely able to contain his impatience. Mark handed him the folder. "It's worse than we thought. The emails are linked to a network of dummy accounts, all leading back to a shadowy organization known as the Syndicate. They're involved in everything from drug trafficking to money laundering. They've got their fingers in a lot of pies, and they don't like loose ends." John felt a chill run down his spine as he flipped through the documents. Why would they target Emily? What do they want from her? Mark shook his head. "I don't know yet, but it's clear they see her as valuable. Maybe she stumbled onto something she shouldn't have, or maybe they're using her to get to someone else. Either way, we need to act fast." John clenched his fists, a surge of determination coursing through him. "What do we do next?" "We need to find a safe place for Emily and the kids," Mark said. "Somewhere the Syndicate can't reach them. In the meantime, I'll keep digging. We need more information if we're going to take them down." John nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family." Over the next few days, John and Mark worked in secret to arrange a safe house for Emily and the children. They found a secluded cabin in the woods, far from prying eyes. With the help of a trusted friend, they set up the cabin with everything Emily and the kids would need for a few weeks. On the day of the move, John told Lily and Ben they were going on a short vacation. The children were excited, unaware of the danger that had prompted the sudden trip. Emily packed their belongings with a heavy heart, knowing this was the best way to keep them safe. As John drove them to the cabin, he kept a watchful eye on the rearview mirror, alert for any sign of pursuit. The journey was tense, but they arrived without incident. The cabin was cozy and well-stocked, a temporary haven from the storm brewing outside. That night, after settling Emily and the kids in, John and Mark sat on the porch, discussing their next move. "We need to get to the root of this," Mark said, his voice low. "The Syndicate is dangerous, but they're not invincible. If we can find out who's behind the threats to Emily, we can bring them down." John agreed, feeling a flicker of hope. "What do you need me to do?" "Stay close to home, keep an eye on things," Mark said. "I'll handle the investigation, but if anything happens, call me immediately." John nodded, determined to do whatever it took to protect his family. As he drove back to Crestwood that night, he felt a mix of fear and determination. The road ahead was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure. He would not rest until his family was safe and the Syndicate was brought to justice. Days turned into weeks, and the tension grew as Mark continued his investigation. John did his best to maintain a sense of normalcy, but it was a constant struggle. He visited Emily and the kids whenever he could, bringing supplies and updates on the situation. Each visit was a bittersweet reminder of the life they had been forced to leave behind. Finally, one evening, Mark called with a breakthrough. "John, I've got a lead. Meet me at the diner." John's heart raced as he made his way to the diner. He found Mark sitting in their usual booth, a grim expression on his face. "What did you find?" John asked, sitting down. "I traced the emails to a local contact," Mark said. "Someone in Crestwood is working with the Syndicate. I don't know who yet, but it's someone close. We need to be careful." John felt a surge of anger and betrayal. "Someone in town? Who would do this?" "We'll find out," Mark said, his voice firm. "But we need to be smart. The Syndicate is dangerous, and they won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who gets in their way." John nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "What's our next move?" Mark outlined a plan to gather more information on the local contact. They would set up surveillance and try to intercept any communications with the Syndicate. It was a risky move, but they were running out of options. As John and Mark left the diner, they knew the stakes had never been higher. The peaceful town of Crestwood was hiding dark secrets, and it was up to them to uncover the truth and protect their loved ones. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but they were ready to face it head-on. John returned home that night, his mind racing with thoughts of the days to come. He knew the fight was far from over, but with Mark's help, he was determined to see it through. As he lay in bed, he thought of Emily and the children, safe in the cabin, and vowed to do whatever it took to keep them safe. The battle against the syndicate had only just begun, but John was ready. He would not rest until his family was safe and the shadowy organization that had torn their lives apart was brought to justice. The tension was palpable as John and Mark prepared to execute their plan. They knew that any misstep could have dire consequences, not just for them, but for Emily and the children as well. They had identified a few key individuals in Crestwood who could be the local contact for the syndicate. It was time to find out who was behind the threats and stop them once and for all. John spent the next few days pretending everything was normal. He went to work, chatted with neighbors, and kept a close eye on the people they suspected. Mark, meanwhile, set up surveillance and monitored communications, waiting for a slip-up that would reveal the traitor. One evening, as John was finishing up at work, Mark called with urgent news. "John, I've got something. Meet me at the usual spot." John's heart raced as he drove to the diner. He found Mark in their usual booth, a laptop open in front of him. "I intercepted a message," Mark said, his voice tense. "It's from the local contact to the syndicate. They're planning something big, and it's happening soon." John leaned in, his eyes scanning the screen. The message was cryptic but clear enough. A meeting was set to take place at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The contact was supposed to hand over important documents, and the syndicate would ensure they stayed protected. "We need to be there," John said, determination in his voice. "We need to catch them in the act." Mark nodded. "We'll need to be careful. If they suspect anything, they'll disappear, and we'll lose our chance." The next day was a blur of preparation. John and Mark gathered equipment, mapped out the warehouse, and planned their approach. They decided to go in undercover, blending into the shadows and waiting for the right moment to strike. As night fell, they made their way to the warehouse. It was a decrepit building, long abandoned and forgotten. They parked a distance away and approached on foot, moving silently through the darkness. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, with only a few flickering lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. John and Mark took their positions, hiding behind stacks of crates and machinery. They didn't have to wait long. A car pulled up outside, and a figure emerged, carrying a briefcase. John's breath caught as he recognized the man. It was Tom, one of the town's respected businessmen and a family friend. Shock and anger coursed through him as he realized the depth of the betrayal. Tom entered the warehouse, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He walked to the center of the room and waited. Moments later, another car arrived, and two men in dark suits stepped out. They were clearly members of the syndicate. Tom handed over the briefcase, his voice low and tense. "Everything you asked for is in here. Now, you promised my family would be safe." The men in suits exchanged a glance. "As long as you continue to cooperate, there won't be any problems." John's hands clenched into fists. He wanted nothing more than to confront Tom right then and there, but he knew they needed evidence. He signaled to Mark, who was recording the entire exchange with a hidden camera. Just as they were about to make their move, one of the men in suits turned, his eyes scanning the shadows. "We're not alone," he said, his voice sharp. Panic surged through John as the men drew their guns, their eyes searching the darkness. Mark grabbed John's arm, pulling him further into the shadows. "We need to move, now," he whispered. They retreated silently, slipping out of the warehouse and back into the night. Once they were safely away, Mark turned to John, his expression grim. "We've got enough to go to the police, but we need to act fast. They know someone was watching." John nodded, his mind racing. "What about Emily and the kids? They need to be safe." "We'll get them to a secure location," Mark said. "I'll make the call." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Mark contacted his old colleagues in the police force, arranging for protection and a raid on the warehouse. John drove to the cabin, his heart pounding with fear for his family's safety. When he arrived, Emily and the children were waiting anxiously. "What's happening, John?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with fear. "We're going to be okay," John said, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Mark's got everything under control. We just need to get you to a safe place." They quickly gathered their belongings and piled into the car. John drove to a safe house provided by the police, where they would be protected until the syndicate was taken down. As they settled into the safe house, John felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He knew they were safe for now, but the fight was far from over. He spent the next few hours pacing, unable to rest until he knew Mark and the police had succeeded. Finally, his phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "It's done. They're in custody." John let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The nightmare was over. He gathered Emily and the children, hugging them tightly. "It's over," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We're safe." In the days that followed, the news of the raid spread through Crestwood. The town was in shock as the details emerged. Tom and several members of the syndicate were arrested, facing charges of extortion, conspiracy, and a host of other crimes. Emily and John slowly began to rebuild their lives, grateful for the support of their friends and the safety of their family. The ordeal had brought them closer together, their bond stronger than ever. Mark continued his work, determined to root out the remaining members of the syndicate. John knew the fight wasn't over, but he was ready to face whatever came next, knowing he had the love and support of his family. As they sat together one evening, watching the sunset over the hills, John felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in a long time. They had faced the darkness and come out stronger on the other side. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, united by love and the unbreakable bonds of family. The shadows of deception had been lifted, and in their place, a new dawn was breaking. The weeks following the raid were a period of adjustment for John and Emily. The dust had settled, but the emotional scars remained. They had been through an ordeal that tested their trust and resilience, and now they had to rebuild their lives piece by piece. John returned to his job at the construction company, trying to regain a sense of normalcy. His colleagues were supportive, though there were whispers and curious glances. The story of the syndicate's influence in Crestwood had spread, and people were still coming to terms with the fact that such darkness had been lurking in their peaceful town. Emily focused on the children, helping them adjust to the changes. Lily and Ben were resilient, but they had questions. Emily and John took time each day to talk with them, explaining what had happened in a way they could understand while reassuring them that they were safe now. One evening, as John was tucking Lily into bed, she looked up at him with wide eyes. "Daddy, why did those bad people want to hurt us?" John sighed, searching for the right words. "Sometimes, Lily, bad people do bad things because they want power or money. But the important thing is that we're safe now, and we're always going to protect you and Ben." Lily nodded, seeming to accept his explanation. "I'm glad we have you and Mommy." John kissed her forehead, feeling a pang of guilt for not noticing the signs sooner. "We're glad we have you too, sweetheart." Despite the progress they were making, John and Emily knew they needed to address the strain on their relationship. One evening, after the kids were in bed, they sat down in the living room, determined to have an honest conversation. "Emily," John began, his voice gentle, "I know things have been tough. I'm sorry I didn't notice what was happening sooner. I should have been more attentive." Emily reached out, taking his hand. "John, you couldn't have known. I should have trusted you and told you what was happening. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I was wrong." John squeezed her hand, feeling a surge of emotion. "We need to trust each other, Emily. We need to face things together, no matter how difficult they are." Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. "I promise, John, no more secrets." They spent the next few hours talking, sharing their fears and hopes for the future. It was a cathartic experience, and by the end of the night, they felt a renewed sense of closeness. As the days turned into weeks, life in Crestwood began to return to a semblance of normalcy. John and Emily worked together to create a new routine, one that prioritized their family and their relationship. They started having regular date nights, rediscovering the joy of each other's company. Mark continued his work with the police, and though the syndicate's influence had been significantly weakened, there were still remnants to deal with. John and Mark remained in close contact, ready to support each other in any way they could. One sunny afternoon, as John was working in the garden, Mark stopped by. He leaned against the fence, a rare smile on his face. "Looks like things are getting back to normal around here." John nodded, wiping his brow. "Yeah, we're getting there. Thanks to you." Mark waved off the gratitude. "Just doing my job. Besides, you did most of the hard work. Protecting your family, staying strong. Not everyone can do that." John appreciated the compliment. "Thanks, Mark. I don't know what we would have done without you." Mark's expression grew serious. "There's still work to be done, John. The syndicate isn't completely gone, but we've dealt them a significant blow. And with people like you and Emily standing up to them, we'll finish the job." John nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "We'll be ready." One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, John looked at his wife and children, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. They had been through a harrowing experience, but it had brought them closer together. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger. "Mommy, can we go to the park this weekend?" Ben asked, his eyes bright with excitement. Emily smiled, ruffling his hair. "Of course, sweetie. We can have a picnic and play some games." John watched them, feeling a warmth spread through him. They had reclaimed their lives, and now it was time to create new, happy memories. As they finished dinner, John took Emily's hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you for standing by me, Emily. I couldn't have done this without you." Emily leaned in, resting her head on his shoulder. "We're a team, John. Always." They sat there in silence, content in the knowledge that they had faced the darkness together and come out stronger on the other side. The future was still uncertain, but they knew they could handle whatever came their way, as long as they had each other. Months passed, and the Parker family settled into a new rhythm. John and Emily had rebuilt their trust, and their relationship was stronger than ever. The children were thriving, their laughter filling the house once more. John continued his work, but he also found time to volunteer with local organizations, helping others who had been affected by the syndicate's actions. It was his way of giving back and ensuring that Crestwood remained a safe and supportive community. One crisp autumn morning, John received a call from Mark. "John, we've got a lead on the remaining members of the syndicate. We're planning a raid tomorrow." John's heart raced. "Do you need my help?" Mark hesitated. "This is dangerous, John. I can't ask you to put yourself in harm's way." "I want to help," John said firmly. "This is my fight too." Mark sighed. "All right, meet me at the station tonight. We'll go over the plan." That evening, John sat with Emily, explaining the situation. She listened quietly, her face a mix of concern and pride. "Are you sure about this, John?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. John nodded. "I need to do this, Emily. For us, for our family, and for Crestwood." Emily took his hand, squeezing it tightly. "Just promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," John said, kissing her forehead. The next day, John joined Mark and the police team as they prepared for the raid. The atmosphere was tense, but there was also a sense of determination. They were ready to put an end to the syndicate's reign of terror. As they approached the hideout, John's adrenaline surged. He moved with the team, his senses heightened. The raid was swift and efficient, and within minutes, they had apprehended the remaining members of the syndicate. John felt a surge of relief as he watched the criminals being led away in handcuffs. It was over. They had won. Returning home that evening, John was greeted by Emily and the children. They hugged him tightly, their faces filled with joy and relief. "You did it, Daddy!" Lily exclaimed, her eyes shining. John smiled, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. "We did it, Lily. Together." As the family sat around the fireplace that night, John reflected on the journey they had been through. It had been a difficult and harrowing time, but it had also brought them closer and made them stronger. They had faced the shadows of deception and emerged victorious. Now, they could look forward to a future filled with hope and love. John wrapped his arm around Emily, pulling her close. "Here's to new beginnings," he said softly. Emily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "To new beginnings," she echoed. And as they sat there, surrounded by the warmth of their home and the love of their family, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The dawn of a new chapter had arrived, and with it, the promise of a brighter future. Kong, Trian Chua Het. Chung Ta Ko the Teep Tuk Fat Trian them Kak Fan de Lam Rohun Kak Kai Tiet Va Dao them Chu Sao Cho Kao Choyan. Fan Teep Theo Ko the Tap Trung Vau Viet Jia Din Parker Va Kong Dong Crestwood Hoi Fuck Sao Su Keen. Va Ko the Com Fa them Kak Kaya Gun Kak Nu Mwa Quan He Jua John Va Emily. Sutrong Tan Kua Lily Va Ben. Va Nung Thach Thuk Mwa Ma Ho Ko the Gap Phi. The aftermath of the raid left the town of Crestwood in a state of both relief and recovery. The revelation of the syndicate's influence had shaken the community to its core, but it also brought people closer together. They were determined to rebuild and ensure that their town remained a safe haven for all its residents. John and Emily decided to take an active role in the community's recovery efforts. They organized neighborhood meetings, where residents could voice their concerns and discuss ways to strengthen their community. The meetings became a place of healing, where people could share their experiences and support each other. Lily and Ben, despite their young age, showed remarkable resilience. With the support of their parents, they gradually returned to their normal routines. Lily's love for reading became a source of comfort, and she started writing her own stories as a way to process her experiences. Ben, with his boundless energy, found solace in outdoor activities and joined a local soccer team. John and Emily made sure to spend quality time with their children, fostering an environment of open communication and trust. They wanted Lily and Ben to feel safe and supported, and they encouraged them to express their feelings and fears. As John and Emily worked together to support their family and community, their bond grew even stronger. They had faced a significant test, and their ability to overcome it together reaffirmed their love and commitment to each other. One evening, after the children were asleep, John and Emily sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet night. The stars sparkled above them, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. "It's amazing how far we've come," Emily said, leaning into John's embrace. "There were times when I wasn't sure we'd make it through." John kissed her forehead. "We've been through a lot, but we've come out stronger. And we'll keep getting stronger, together." Emily smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. "I love you, John. Thank you for standing by me." "I love you too, Emily. And I always will," John replied, his voice filled with emotion. While the immediate threat of the syndicate had been neutralized, John and Emily knew that life would continue to present challenges. They were committed to facing them head-on, with the same determination and resilience that had seen them through the recent crisis. One such challenge arose when Emily decided to return to work. She had put her career on hold to focus on the family, but now she felt ready to re-enter the workforce. John supported her decision wholeheartedly, and together they navigated the changes it brought to their daily lives. Emily found a job as a project coordinator for a nonprofit organization focused on community development. Her experience and dedication quickly made her an invaluable asset to the team. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing she was making a positive impact on the community. John, meanwhile, continued to excel in his role at the construction company. He took on more responsibilities, including mentoring younger employees and leading new projects. His colleagues admired his leadership and integrity, and he became a trusted figure in the company. As the months passed, the Parker family settled into their new normal. They had faced darkness and come out into the light, stronger and more united than ever. They knew that life would always have its ups and downs, but they were ready to face whatever came their way. One evening, as they gathered around the dinner table, Lily shared a story she had written. It was about a family who faced great challenges but overcame them with love and courage. "This is really good, Lily," John said, his voice filled with pride. "You're a talented writer." Lily beamed. "Thanks, Dad. I wanted to write something that shows how important family is." Emily smiled, reaching out to squeeze Lily's hand. "You've done a wonderful job, sweetheart. We're so proud of you." As they continued to talk and laugh, the Parker family felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had been through a lot, but they had each other. And as long as they had that, they knew they could face anything. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also brought them closer together. They had learned the true meaning of resilience, love, and family. And as they looked to the future, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The shadows of the past had given way to a new dawn, filled with hope and possibility. And the Parker family was ready to embrace it, with open hearts and unbreakable bonds. As we wrap up Betrayal in Crestwood, uncovering the secrets of a cheating wife, we see the Parker family stronger and more united than ever. John and Emily have faced unimaginable challenges, but their love and resilience have carried them through. With the syndicate dismantled and peace returning to Crestwood, they can finally look forward to a future filled with hope and happiness. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of betrayal, courage, and redemption. Stay tuned for more captivating stories that delve into the complexities of life and the strength of the human spirit. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until then.